they're the cells that produce what?
Antibodies.
Antibodies, okay? And we know that there are different types of antibodies. If I was looking at mucus, saliva, tears, what type of antibody would I likely be looking at?
Lac something.
Huh?
I can't remember the name. It's lac.
A, right? Those are the ones that are secreted. However, if I were to ask you about which one is found in the blood in the largest amount gives long-term immunity to you? IgG. So you can tell me some of the differences between them. What stimulates a response by a T cell or a B cell? What is it that makes them even do something in the first place? An antigen. And how are antigens presented? So antigens are presented how though? Think it through. How does the T cell know there's something going on inside the body? Or B cell? So maybe they're having a secondary response, but if let's just say it's the first response, the second response, the 20th response, the time I've seen it. How do I know there's something that is inside my body? The 500th time I've seen it, my body still has to let me know. How do I find that out? Come on, you guys got this. How do I find it out?
The CD cells.
CD markers help me bind to what? I've got all the time in the world to help you. CD markers bind to what?
Is it MHC?
MHC. And MHC are found on what?
They're on antigens.
MHC present antigens. They present portions of the antigens, known as the epitopes, right? However, they present the antigens on the MHC molecules on what types of cells?
Phagocytes.
Well, the MHC molecules are found on the phagocytes. So those include what? Neutrophils, eosinophils, dendritic cells, macrophages, right? You guys remember that? So those types of cells that present an antigen are called? I've just been waiting for one of you to yell it at me. If I can present an antigen, I'm called what type of cell again?
APC, antigen presenting cell.
Good, because that is literally on the question. Antigen presenting cells. All right. If I show the presence of antibodies against some kind of an infectious disease, what will, hold on, let me see. Oh, okay, so if I have antibodies against an infectious disease, what do you know about me?
You've had it before.
I've had it, I have it.
You've been exposed to it.
I've lived near somebody. I've been recently encountered it, right? What about if I recently had a blood transfusion? Ever hear stories where people will get HIV because someone gave them HIV tainted blood?
Mm-hmm.
So the 4 ways that I will show positive: I've had it, I have it, I've recently been near it or exposed to it, and I received blood from someone who had it. You ever heard about that? That's why when you go give blood to Red Cross, they are going to definitely check your blood, and you can actually get them to give you a free HIV test, but they usually, when you sign it, you sign away the results of your test. Depends. Free versus that, but they're going to check your blood before they ever put it into a person. For Hep B and for HIV. What does it mean to have self-markers? What are self-markers?
So that you understand what you are so you don't attack yourself.
What are self-markers? Like what types of molecules are actually my self-markers?
Could be
think all the way back to A&P1 when we first learned about transplants. Think a little bit about chapter 16 when you learn about transplants. Self-markers are usually MHCs, right? They're glycoproteins on the surface of your membranes. All right, that's all of chapter 15. Chapter 16, we talked about specific types of disorders with the immune system. There are 4 types of hypersensitivity reactions. So we talked about them as type 1, 2, 3, 4, but we also kind of gave some examples. So type 1, you have antibodies doing tissue destruction. Type 2, could have an allergy and allergic response like anaphylaxis. Type 3, you can have an immune complex reaction. What was type 1 an example?
Like sneezing.
Seasonal allergies, right? Rhinitis was what we called sneezing. What about type 2? What's an example of type 2?
Food allergies.
Okay, so was that type 2? Going back to make sure that's the example I gave, because I'm actually confused by what you just said.
This is what I have to say that number detected.
Because food allergies is still under
Type 1.
type 1.
Blood reaction.
Alright, so that's when I accidentally do.
What?
I'm modifying the question as we were talking, guys. Type 2 was the one when I accidentally give a patient blood. Type 3 would happen if I had what we call serum sickness, right? And then the last one was in the case of somebody.
Transplant.
Alright. Okay, I just made that a more amazing question. I love it better. Alright. So any heightened or inappropriate immune response that leads to tissue damage is called what? It's actually like the definition.
Allergy.
That's called a, not allergic, but what's the actual technical term for allergic reaction? It's called a, so we had when the immune system was acting up and when the immune system was not. What were they? So when the immune system was under versus when it was over, what were those words we used?
Hypersensitivity.
Hypersensitivity. So that's what any reaction, allergic reaction is, it's a hypersensitivity reaction. What are antigens that elicit allergic reactions called?
IgE.
Well, that's the antibody, but the antigens, we call them something special. You're not wrong, say it. I think you just said it. I think you mouthed it.
No, I just said antigens to myself.
So what do I call it if it actually causes an allergic reaction? It's called an
Allergy.
allergen. So it's like really simplistic, but we have different words that sound like that, so it's just worth clarifying. So you guys, when we look at like type sensitivity, I'm gonna think of, and I really want you to be clear on them. Type 1 is what's gonna cause the sneezing, the sniffling, and all the way up to the severity of anaphylaxis. So it is both airborne particles. Some examples of airborne particles, the pollen from the plants outside, dander from a pet, even like anybody gets allergic to fungus in their homes. A lot of people will have like a airborne fungus growing in their vents, and people will get really sick. Have you ever heard about people that get like the lung diseases because they get a black mold in their lungs? Well, sometimes they'll have allergic reactions and things like that. So we have lots of airborne ones. Those are airborne types of allergens versus respiratory ones. All right, now if I do see someone having an airway obstruction, what is that called?
Anaphylaxis.
Okay, and it can also be anaphylaxis if it's respiratory anaphylaxis. If it's systemic, it's actually circulatory collapse. Have you ever heard of people getting allergy shots? Because we talked about it this week. When people are getting allergy shots, what are they doing to themselves?
They're dilating their.
Well, if they're allergic to something, they're getting an allergy shot. So if I am sensitive, hypersensitive to something, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to desensitize myself, right? That's why they get the shot. They try to basically control their immune system over time. First, you said it, Ismar. What's the first time I see something called? Called it a secondary response when it was in the immune system. But when it comes to an allergen, the very first time I encounter something, that is known as the blank dose.
Infectious dose.
Special word when we talk about allergies.
Infectious dose?
It's not infectious. Allergens aren't infectious, are they?
No.
No.
It's known as the sensitizing dose, guys. Like, that's the first time your body sees it and encounters it. Now, if I were to experience a hypersensitivity reaction, what are the major things in my, like, which antibody? You said it earlier, Monty Cruz. IgE. What other cells do it, guys?
Mast cells.
Mast cells, they release all that histamine. And there's one with basophils. So basophils, mast cells, and IgE, those are the things that I'm gonna find are actually what's causing the symptoms of that allergic reaction. And so if it is mediated by your body reacting to it versus an antibody mediated reaction. An antibody mediated reaction that causes your cells to break open, agglutinate, or what about even like the case of the mom that has a incompatibility with her kid? Do you remember what type that is again?
Top ones.
So if it's antibody mediated, it's gonna be type 2. That's why the mom literally attacks her own baby. She causes her own child to get eaten by her antibodies. It's antibody mediated. All right, the last one is chapter 17. So if I have cells and antibodies and they stick together and clump, what was that called again?
Glutination.
And I can use that to test something. Now, if I'm testing something, I want it to be both specific and sensitive. So specificity is a property that does what? What would a specific test help me do?
Narrow down what it is you're looking for.
So we're looking for a specific antigen. So it would not react with any other antigens. It would tell me that that's the test. Biochemical tests include things like what?
The shape and structure.
Biochemical tests. So we're thinking about physiology. We're thinking about do they use glycolysis? Can they live in the presence of oxygen? So we're thinking about enzyme-driven reactions, right? How do I spot an enzyme in a sentence? What does an enzyme always say?
ACE.
ASE, right? So if I said like sugar fermentation or oxidase or, you know, all of those different assays that were up on the board there, different types of assays are all gonna be enzyme driven if they're biochemical, right? Because biochemistry is done by the help of catalysts. I pointed out specific examples to you guys. Okay, what are types of specimens we could use in collection? You put the list up. What are the types of specimens I could use to harvest and then later culture?
Like blood, urine.
Blood, urine. I mean, you can run a culture on even skin cells,
Mm-hmm.
throat swabs, because titer is known as the amount of what?
Is it antibodies
Where?
in the blood?
Okay, so what's another word for blood though? A titer is done during serology. And specimen collection is done in a sterile environment. How's it done?
Aseptic.
Using aseptic techniques. So it's not done in a sterile environment. Does a doctor always have to do it?
No.
No. Who might be doing it?
The nurse.
Oh, okay. So what type of data do we have when we try to figure out what type of microbe it is? We had two different types of data we talked about. Presumptive and
No, confirmative.
confirmative. And so presumptive is getting me to what step?
To determine what you think. it
So I
is.
think I know what it is, whereas confirmatory is doing what?
No.
Testing to confirm.
Those are the questions on your quiz. Now that we've just looked at those, how do you feel?